Hi everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on 10 pieces of content to create and distribute in 2021. Before we begin, I just want to let everyone know that Allison James Estates and Homes is a nationwide brokerage which offers 100% support, 100% commission, and 0 franchise fees. Why split your commission if you don't need to? You earned it all, so shouldn't you keep it all? Our goal at Allison James is to always give back to our agents by providing education, training sessions, live webinars, live events, and full broker support with the most up-to-date tools and technology available. We are always looking for new tools and ways to be able to provide them to you and our agents at a lower or discounted price so that you can keep your hard-earned money. All of us here at Allison James do hope that you and your families are doing well and staying safe during this time. We will, as we have for the past 9 months or so, continue to host webinars such as this one to just kind of help you build your business virtually and bring you knowledge and value that's going to help you stay connected with your clients and, like I said, continue to grow your business. So today's webinar, as always, is sponsored by our preferred lender, Movement Mortgage. For more information about Allison James Estates and Homes, please visit ajicareers.com. Let's go ahead and get started with today's topic. If you do have any questions throughout today's presentation, please go ahead and just submit them in the chat box in your Zoom control panel, and we'll go ahead and do a Q&A at the end of the presentation. I do also want to let you guys know beforehand that this will be recorded and you will automatically receive a recording of this webinar within 48 business hours of when we end this webinar. So with that said, I'll go ahead and now pass it over to our speaker, Eric Hammond. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, I've never heard that term, 48 business hours. Isn't that like 16 days or something?
Yeah, a long time.
I'm just kidding. I'm sure they're excited for the replay.
Hopefully.
Cool. Well, guys, welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Did we talk about QV Core? Sorry, I was reading something else. Or do we need to cover that slide? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, I did not mean to go to that slide. That's what I was saying. Okay. But now we're back.
Cool. I don't know if you guys can see me or if you can see my 10 pieces of content slide. So either way, I usually have a slideshow presentation for these, and I figured, you know what, this is all about video. Let's make it all about video. I think for a lot of us, it's easy to hide behind the presentation, especially over these Zoom calls and do whatever we're doing. But I want to put myself out there and let you guys see my smiling face so we can jump into this. I'm starting to see all the people coming in here, and it's fun to see some of these familiar faces. We used to do a lot of lunch and learns with Tori and Allison James, and I definitely miss those days of seeing you guys in person and interacting with you guys and asking questions and all that kind of fun stuff. But here we are in the Zoom world, so we're making do with what we have. As Tori said, today we're going to talk about 10 pieces of content to create in 2021. After I gave her that topic, I was like, man, maybe I should have made it 21 videos or something. I don't know. 10 just seemed kind of like the number that popped up, but we're making it work. I was also I'm going to get into this later, but we got a bunch of bonus pieces that you can make as well too. So don't just get stuck on the 10 pieces of content. Which month should I put it out, and when do I do this? We'll get into all that as well. And as Tori said, we got questions at the end. So be sure to write down your questions. We're going to cover quite a bit of content about the content to make. And obviously, if you guys have questions about, cameras or microphones or where do I do this or how do I use this program, just write those down and we'll be covering all those. So let's just start from the beginning. So I tried to put these videos in a sequential order that makes sense for the transaction of real estate. So basically starting with the buyer, working your way through the seller, and then all the way into working with investors at the very end. So kind of think about it as the timeline of working with a real estate client and how it all pieces together. So you can release these videos throughout the year. You could create them all right now while the year's coming and dump them all in January. It's really up to you guys. I'll give you a few strategies on how I would do it, but of course it's up to you. If you want to make one video a month and put it out there like that, of course you can decide how this goes. The big thing that I want to emphasize here is get comfortable with video. We've been talking about video for so long, and I think as we've had to hibernate these last 7 or 8 months, we're getting more comfortable with video, and we're getting used to being on screen, and we're getting used to having to hear what we sound like through microphone and all that. And as hard as it was at first, I think a lot of you guys are finally getting more comfortable with that. Video is great. YouTube is up massively over the last 6 months. Facebook videos are up, incredible. Instagram videos are up, live videos are up. Everything's up because people love learning, right? They love to learn, they love to watch. everybody has 10, 20 minutes to binge watch something. So the sooner you can get comfortable creating video, the better off you're going to be. Obviously, a lot of these videos are going to require you to be front and central in front of that camera, whether you're holding your cell phone or you're hiring somebody to film you. But a couple of these could be done where you're maybe behind the camera recording something else as well. So find what's comfortable with you, get familiar with the camera and how to use it and how you're going to stand and where you're going to position yourself and lighting and all that kind of stuff. Today, I feel like my lighting is terrible because it's kind of dark in here today, but just get comfortable, and the more video you do, the better you'll get. I remember my coach told me to do video several years ago, and if you knew me back in high school, I was the biggest introvert ever. I had such a hard time talking to strangers or people or talking about things that I didn't know about. And over the last 20 years, I've kind of figured out what I'm doing and figured out how to look at that little lens and get more comfortable with it. But the first one's the worst one. I always tell people that. It's so hard to get that first one out of the way. You're probably going to delete it and do it 20 times. But after that first one, it just becomes part of you and you get more and more familiar with it. So get the first one out of the way, figure out your groove and how you speak and the flow, and go back and watch it, even though that's painful, and make corrections and learn, right? Like, where do you say, and do you stutter? Are you always looking at yourself in the screen? What is it that you can start to correct? Some of the things that helped me in the beginning was to take classes like Toastmaster. That helped me figure out how to formulate sentences and get my thoughts out, and how to speak on the fly as you go. Toastmaster is one of those classes you can sign up for, and they meet weekly and they're like an hour long, and it just teaches you how to present yourself better and try to get rid of the ums and all those kind of things that I still say. But anyway, so let's get into the first video. So the first one is understanding the mortgage. And I used to sell, let me kind of back out about myself a little bit. I've been selling real estate now for almost 11 years, been part of probably 1,600 different transactions, been part of real estate investing and wholesaling and flipping and traditional transactions as well. I gave up selling real estate full time about 4 years ago, and now I just kind of do it for friends and family and people that are looking for a house or investment property or things like that. But I guess you forget how much you know when you've been in real estate for a while. I just had a sister-in-law who bought her first house, and they just closed on Monday. And over the last month, the questions that have come from her and her husband, I'm like, wow, like, don't people just know these things? Like, I just take for granted the knowledge that we have as real estate agents. You guys live it and breathe it every single day. And so you probably know things that you assume that your buyers would know automatically. And I think that starts with the mortgage, right? The mortgage is the most complicated financial decision you'll ever make in your life. And there's so many papers you've got to sign and decisions to make, and right, there's just a lot going on. And so I think for a lot of people, they come to wanting to buy a home or make that first investment in real estate, and they're tied up with a mortgage, right? So let's just start off with content about the mortgage, right? What types of loans are available, right? Whether it's VA, conventional, FHA, jumbo loans, there's just tons of different stuff, right? That's one idea. Talk about the down payment, right? Like, where does that down payment come from? Can you borrow it? Anyway, just down payment. Like, there's a big part there. What docs you need to submit. We were working with a client about a year ago, and they'd already bought a couple houses, but it had been a few years, and the new lender that they were working with was asking for all these things that they'd never heard of before. And so just, again, even if you have seasoned buyers who've bought stuff before, every day changes. And especially as lending changes throughout the year, right? And we get into new interest rates and different things coming out. And as banks get harder to work with again, you have to deal with these things. So what docs are your lenders going to ask for? I guess part of this too is that every one of these 10 videos that we're going to create become evergreen pieces of content, which means that if you make that video today, it should still be relevant in 2022, 2025, things like that. You might have to update bits and pieces of it, but it should be evergreen, meaning that it'll stand the test of time and you don't have to keep recreating this video. However, there are going to be pieces of it, like if you talk about the current interest rate right now, that will change, right? If there's certain things that you need to submit today that may be different in a couple years from now, those are going to be time relevant videos. So when I say these 10 pieces of video, it probably could stem into 30, 40, 60 different types of videos, but know that the major structural ones are going to be evergreen pieces of content that you can host on your YouTube channel or on your website or put in a blog or send out in a newsletter, okay? So the last part of understanding the mortgage is the difference between being pre-qualified pre-qualified and being pre-approved. I think a lot of lenders get people through real quick just to find out what they can borrow. They send them on their way with their agent to see, what they're going to go buy. And then they come back and they realize they need a whole bunch more information just to get them to qualify for a loan. So anyway, that's the mortgage part. One thing I like about the mortgage videos is that it would be great if you could sit down with your preferred lender and make these videos together, right? Sit down next to them, have them in the camera with you, ask questions back and forth. This could be a 5-minute or it could be a 50-minute long video. You could break it up into a couple different pieces. Just really being able to have somebody else on camera with you takes so much of the stress out of doing that. So find somebody who's bubbly and friendly and easy and comfortable to talk to on the video, and set the camera back if you use your laptop or your phone or whatever you're going to do, and interview them. That could be a great first video to work with because you have a partner in crime who you can work with and kind of shelve some of the stress that you're going to be going through. One thing I would suggest if you're going to interview people is have a list of questions. Like right now on the screen behind me, I have everything that I'm going to be talking to you guys today because I'll get sidetracked and it'll be 3 hours and I'll realize that we haven't even gotten to video number 2 yet. So have your questions lined up, figure out what you're going to talk about, prep your interview so that they know what questions you're going to ask them so that they're prepared to answer these things as well in case there's anything that they need to prepare for the video. Okay, so that's video number 1. As we move on, let's talk about HOAs and Mello-Roos. And I know most of the country doesn't have to do with Mello-Roos, but we do here in California, and they can be stressful and expensive. It's basically a financial burden that a lot of HOAs and communities and cities will put on the residents to help pay for upgrades, sidewalks, sewer improvements, things that they're trying to do, right? So it's similar to like a tax, but it's basically for a period of time that neighbor could have. So if you're not familiar with what a Mello-Roos is. But basically with HOA, you have restrictions, you have permissions, you have different things that you're able to do in that community, right? So some of the topics could be CC&Rs, right? Like there's usually these big books of CC&Rs that you have to distribute to your buyers or review before they buy the property. That could be a huge topic in and of its own. I remember we bought a townhouse a few years ago to rent in a community, got a great price on it. I was super excited. The payment on the mortgage was like half of what I could rent it for. So I was just stoked for this investment. Come to find out, I read through the CC&Rs and you were not allowed to rent these properties to people on nightly, monthly, or yearly basis. You had to have full-time residents who own the property. So it completely dashed my opportunity to rent that property. And had I not reviewed those CC&Rs, I would have never known that that was the case, right? So if you've got a client who wants to buy a piece of property to rent it out, they close and then they find out, oh, I can't rent this property. They're going to come right back to you. So creating content about what the restrictions of that HOA are can be very helpful. Just talking about the community as a whole, right? It doesn't have to be the woes and pains of real estate. It could be the benefits too. For example, we live in an HOA that's been established for 40 years. They have a great community park around here. There's lots of walking trails. The HOA is really easy to work with when it comes to remodeling or changing your house, but they have some guidelines about what you can do. So talk about the pros, talk about the cons. If there's certain HOAs in your community that you sell a lot in, maybe you can get to know them. You can interview the president of the HOAs. That could be another great, companionship video that you wanted to get into. So think about, why people want to live in the communities that they do. Maybe there's pools or rec areas or just different amenities that people are going to enjoy. Just because that community has been there for a while doesn't mean that everybody in that area knows about it. You're going to have specific buyers in this time, right? They want specific things. I was reading a stat in Realtor Magazine the other day that talked about, without showings and all these things are in COVID right now, buyers just have to know what they want. Sometimes they're buying these houses sight unseen until they even do the inspection. So you really have to get to know these communities and share what's available in your area and why people want to live in that area. One of the other videos that I recommend people a lot is, top 10 reasons why somebody would want to buy a home in your zip code. What's going on with the schools, what's going on with the stores and the locations nearby, what beaches or parks or amenities are close by. If people understood why people want to move into your community, they're going to want to buy a home in that community. So, especially with search terms that are available, if you have a video on YouTube that says, top 10 reasons to live in San Diego, for example, people are going to search living in San Diego and your video can pop up near the top. So there's a lot you can do with these types of search terms. Back to HOAs. Recently, we tore down our house all the way down to the concrete foundation and rebuilt it anew. We doubled the size of it. And when we bought the house, that was our plan. We knew all along this is what we were going to do. And everybody says, oh, the HOA is going to be terrible. You're going to have such a hard time dealing with it. The remodel process is a pain. honestly, we submitted a single piece of paper with an outline of our house. We put some paint swatches on there, and that was it. And they approved it, right? It was super easy. And so if you've got, communities with homes being added onto, people making changes, like our house was originally 1,200 square feet and 2 bedrooms. Like, it was just a small house that was kind of obsolete for most families nowadays. And so if you have these weird houses that are available for sale that people can't see past the originalness of them, maybe provide, some documents or information about how you go through the remodel process. Talk about ideas of how you can upgrade those homes and make them more habitable for today's standard. Okay. Talk about changing properties. Another big one is who's responsible for what. So another idea of this is we lived in a townhouse for a while, and it was basically 4 units that had, sharing walls. And the big question became who's responsible for what. So at a period of time, we found out that we had termites. And so is that the HOA's responsibility? Is it the owner's responsibility to tend the place? How do you deal with these, common tenants in the same area? If the roof fails, who's responsible for these kind of things? So again, talking about who's responsible for what. If you have new buyers coming into the market and they're not familiar with who's responsible for what on a house, that could be some very, very valuable content that you can create. Okay. Let's go on to number 3, which is home inspections. That can be a huge one. I would say that's probably the biggest piece of content that you can make outside of why you should live in a certain area. When it comes to buying a first house, people are so intimidated right after that home inspection. Again, with my sister-in-law just buying their house, they got their fat binder of all the problems and the home inspector trying to talk them out of buying that house. I mean, if you read through the thing, basically the house was going to fall over in the next windstorm and it would probably burn up in the process. So get the home inspector out there, talk about what they're looking at in that house. Again, because of COVID, you might have to, wear a mask or something in the property when you're doing it, but figure out how to interview a home inspector and say, over the course of being in this house for 2 or 3 hours during the home inspection, what are you looking at and why are you looking at it that way? What are you trying to find out? If you're looking at the electrical, what pieces are you looking at? Are there certain years that I should be aware of, of certain problems that happen in this area? How do I inspect the roof, and how do I know that the water heater is going to make it 10 more years? If there's solar on the roof, how do I deal with that, right? There's just all sorts of different pieces in the home inspection. And if you're dealing with a first-time home buyer who's never bought a piece of property before, that home inspection is probably going to talk them out of buying that transaction, and then they're going to have to start all over again. I'm sure many of you who've sold at least a dozen houses have had to deal with that before. So be prepared. Find a good home inspector, again, who's comfortable talking and sharing their trade and what they do and why they do it. And again, don't get on the roof necessarily, because I don't want you falling off with your phone trying to do a selfie or something like that, but talk to them and what they're looking for. One thing I learned early on with buying rental properties is that you have to do really good inspections, and you have to inspect things that you might not think about. We bought a property that was built in 1942. This was out in Utah. It was a single-story house that had 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, perfect little rental property, had a garage. I think I had it rented, like a contract signed before I even closed on the property. 2 days after the tenants moved in, they were washing their kids in the bathtub, and the bath water started filling up more and more and more. And they're like, the drain's not draining, right? We can't get the water out of the tub. And I was like, well, call a plumber, they'll roto-root it out or whatever. They called the plumber. Turned out that the pipes from 1942 had done that, and there was no way for the water to flow out. Back in the 40s, they decided to take asphalt roofing and roll it up into a tube, and that worked as the sewer. So no pipes, no clay, no PVC, nothing like that. So we pretty much, the second day we owned the house, had to invest $12,000 into a new sewer system from the edge of the house all the way out into the street. My responsibility completely. Had I done a better inspection on that property and scoped the sewer lines and knew what I was looking for, I would have saved tons of money in buying that property. So again, if you can educate your clients on what to inspect and why you inspect it and what you're looking for, you're going to stand out as being this super wealth of knowledge, and people are going to trust you more because of what you know, right? From the outside, it's amazing how all of us real estate agents look the same, we act the same, we seem the same to everybody, but then you start to get to know what that real estate agent knows and what they understand and the value that they bring to that transaction, and it separates you from everybody else. And that's really what this content does. It allows you to separate yourself from the pack of real estate agents out there who all seem the same, okay? Okay, so we covered home inspections. Let's get into number 4, timelines. That's a big one too, right? Everybody wants the keys to that house as they're moving in. They want to move in on a Friday night at 3:30, right when everything's about to close. And there's always something that's left unsigned or forgotten about, or the lender needs one more piece of information that you forgot to give them. So if you can have accurate timelines as you go, right, and just discussing the property, right? Just talk about the 30, 45 days or however long it typically takes you to close a house. When do we need our earnest money by? When do we need to do our home inspections by? When do we really need to release all this information? When am I, going to be able to hand the keys over to you as a buyer? All these kind of things, right? Just talk about the typical transactions, and obviously with a big asterisk in there, say things may change, and here's where things might go awry, and here's where we might have problems. So just be prepared for that. So talk about the buyer side and the seller side, so you can understand, this could be a timeline for both parties here. And again, set realistic expectations. Because again, if you promise the world and then something happens and they have to wait another week, it crushes everybody. I've had so many people where buyers come in to buy a house, they have all their family in town to help them move. Something gets held up that weekend and now they can't close till Monday, and it's just a disaster. And they look at you as being the problem. So don't become the problem. Okay, video number 5, home improvements. This is a huge one because as soon as somebody moves into a house, there's something that they want to change, right? They might want to paint, they want to change the carpet, the roof leaked the next day because it rained that night. There's just a million things that can come up. So with talking about improvements, a big one that I like to discuss is where to put your money, right? Because not everything that you spend on a house is going to bring instant value. That sewer line, for example, $12,000 spent. There was no increased value in that house. It was not worth anything more than the day before we replaced that sewer line, except the plumbing worked. So what you spend your money on is important. If people want to put in pools or new landscaping or add a second story, those can be great improvements, right? But if people want to spend $10,000 on new carpet, it might not help the value of that house. So depending on where people are and their habits and lifestyle and choices of what they need in that house can affect things greatly. Again, when we bought our house, I knew exactly that we were going to tear it down and start over and do a remodel. I knew we had to keep within a certain budget so that I didn't become the most expensive house in this neighborhood, right? I wanted to add on and make it a great house and work for our needs, but I also had to keep in mind what was going on in this community. There's 187 houses here. I had to keep a similar style. I had to be able to sell this house again someday. When we were flipping houses, a lot of the time you come across these weird obsolete properties that are just so strange. I mean, I came across a house once that had turned the living room into a pool. You literally walk in the front door and there's a pool. I'm like, this is cool if you like to swim, but it just didn't work, right? So we had to fill the pool, you had to make it a living room again, and just like that was not a great investment for those people. So what are you going to do with additions? A video that I like to make too is in communities, again, where all the houses are the same, right? We call them cookie cutter neighborhoods, where maybe there's 4 or 5 different house plans and people start changing things and adding onto the kitchen or remodeling things. Builders don't always get it right? There's things that they do that are kind of weird. They put closets in weird space, or they forget just how people live. And so if somebody in that neighborhood has started improving those houses and you're seeing ideas that work, go talk to those people and just knock on the door and say, hey, I'm your local real estate agent. I love what you're doing with your property. We're selling a couple homes in this community. Would it be okay if I came in and just showed some of the buyers what you've done to your kitchen to make it a little bit easier to live or make it more habitable, right? Maybe you need to open up some walls. Maybe you need to move a window around or two. Just show people what's possible. Not everybody has that design mind and they can see things, from paper into real life. So if you can show them in a video what people have done, that can make a huge world of difference. So where should their money go? Another big one is, biggest bang for the buck. Not everybody needs to spend the most amount of money on something. For example, if you need to upgrade your water heater, right? You might not need to go to a tankless water heater. That can be usually double the amount of money over a tank water heater. If someone's only going to be there for a few years, you're not going to be able to recoup that money on a tankless water heater versus a simple 40-gallon tank water heater. So really understanding, where to spend your money and what that's going to do for the value of the house can be huge. Another thing I had here was going over rough costs of remodel. So we had some clients a few years back and they were looking at houses, but they wanted a old kitchen so that they could go in and remodel it because they wanted to do their own thing, right? They wanted their own style, they wanted their own flair and how they use that kitchen. And I was like, great, let's find older houses that you can remodel and do that too. So we look at all these houses, we found all these kitchens that were decent size, they could, be gutted and remodeled. And we found this great house and had a great price and it had a blank slate that they could work with. And they said no. And I was like, okay, like we've looked at all these houses, just tell me what's wrong with this situation. And they're like, well, the kitchen that we want is going to cost us $150,000. I'm like, holy cow, like these are on $600,000 houses. You're gonna spend $150,000 on the kitchen? Like, tell me what you're gonna put in here, you know, like, do you have a gold stove? Like, I just don't understand how you're gonna spend so much money. And they're like, well, you know, we're gonna be getting these certain cabinets and we wanna do this countertop. And I mean, they're talking like KitchenAid appliances, so nothing crazy. And I'm like, guys, you could probably do this whole remodel for like $30,000. But in their mind, they'd shopped online and found all these crazy things and they just priced it based on what they saw online. So it was inaccurate, right? And so they're talking themselves out of buying all these houses because of what they had thought the price was. And so if you can, again, talk to them, maybe you interview a kitchen remodel contractor, right? And say, okay, if you want new kitchen cabinets, this is what it's going to cost. If you want new countertop, this is what it's going to cost per foot. If you want these appliances, you know, this is kind of a good ballpark range. People have no idea. If you don't do it on a regular basis, you have no idea. And not that you guys are remodeling houses every day, but you can meet and talk to people who are, right? Have those great partnerships with contractors who can help bring value to the relationship. Again, if you're the agent that has all these resources, you're going to be the one that everybody comes to for business. So have one of those guys in your pocket. Okay, we talked about home improvements. Let's go to number 6, understanding home values. This is a huge touchy subject because everybody knows about Redfin and everybody knows about Zillow, right? And they think that that's the Bible and that that's just how it is. It's not, right? Things can change. You have different factors. You have different reasons why that may not be the case. Obviously, if you live in a neighborhood where there's 100 houses and all 100 homes are exactly the same, like a townhouse or something like that, there's not going to be a lot of variation in value. But as soon as people start adding on or remodeling or adding those $150,000 kitchens, it's going to change things. And so one thing I like to do is help people create a video that talks about Zillow and saying, okay, here's 2 houses, right? And they look the same from the outside and they're the same square footage, but maybe this one has a view and this one doesn't, or this one has a pool and this one doesn't, and show how Zillow and the MLS can help you understand what the actual price is on these homes. When people go to sell their property, they always think it's worth more than it actually is because of these programs, right? And maybe they're pretty close, but usually they're anywhere from 10 to 20% off. So you have to bring them in, you have to show them how you as an agent and an appraiser work, right? That's another idea under here, is creating a piece of content with an appraiser. When we were buying houses as rental properties and as flips, I would usually hire my own appraiser just to see what they thought the value was. I really wanted to know how they worked and what they were doing for the bank on that side, just so I could make sure we're in the right line. Typically, our appraiser would know the quality of material that we do on a flip, and they'd say, okay, if you're going to buy the house in this condition and you're going to spend, you know, this kind of money and do these types of finishes, that the house is going to be worth X, you know, at the end. And that always told me about where I could come in and about what my budget was going to be, so that I stayed within those lines. And we were usually within $2,000 or $5,000 of where we needed to be. So that can be helpful. So find a good appraiser that you like. If you don't know anybody, you know, the next time you sell a house and you go get an appraisal done for that home, just talk to the appraiser at that time and say, hey, you know, I'm making content for my audience. Just want to see if you might be interested in helping me do a quick video. Those guys are usually super friendly and helpful and happy to talk. So understanding home values. Another big one is just looking at, you know, sales every couple of months, because obviously, like in California right now, we're seeing massive appreciation still. I had a client who bought a home a year ago, and his parents now are coming down to move into the same area and they want the same house and everything. And I'm like, well, bad news for them is the house has gone up about 10%. Good news for you, you guys have about $90,000 in equity. So you just got to see where the market's going, right? And help people understand, you know, what's going on. Are we in a downturn? Are we going up right now? What's going on? You know, the time when people lose money on selling is obviously when they have to sell, because that locks in that price. So just really understanding the market and where things are. That's a great newsletter video. Again, just every quarter, maybe putting out a quick update of, you know, here's the typical value of a home in our neighborhood and here's what's going on. And, you know, if you got a 2,000 square foot, 4-bedroom house, here's what it's worth right now. And it just helps people really understand the market and where things are going. As soon as people know that I've been in real estate any period of time, they always ask that question, how's the market, right? So if you can create videos on how's the market, that's not really an evergreen piece of video, but it's one that people are going to come back and watch. So I tell people to do newsletters because they get opened and they get read and they remind everybody that you know that you're still an agent. So put one of those how's the market type of videos out there every quarter. It's going to help you out a lot. Okay, how are we doing on time here? We're about halfway through. Good. Well, let's go on to number 7, staging and repairs. That's a big one too. So coming from the investing world, repairs was a huge one. We had a term called ARV, and it was the after repair value. It was the most amount of money that we could get for that property when we went to sell it, right? So you have purchase price, which is different than ARV. Purchase price is however much you can negotiate for that property. And then ARV is the most amount of money that someone's going to be spending for that property. So it goes back again to comps and really understanding the value of that neighborhood. If you've got a neighborhood that has older dated homes and none of them have been repaired, you're going to have a certain threshold that you can sell that house for. But if you're in that neighborhood and you come in and the kitchen's brand new and it's got new carpet and a new roof and new windows and all those kind of things, and you're the best house, it's going to be able to peak that value, right? And you're going to be able to set a new ARV, a new after repair value. So really understanding repairs and staging can be huge. One thing that we would focus on when we were selling our clients' houses here in San Diego was increasing the value as much as we could. So what we found out is that our typical homeowner that we would work with had owned their house for about 13 years, which means that they hadn't done anything to that house in 13 years. They bought it, they moved into it, and they never touched it again, right? Because it worked. And so we'd be selling these clients' houses who were typically in their 70s. The owner was, 70, 75 years old. The house hadn't been updated in 13 plus years. It had, almond appliances. It had yellowing kitchen cabinets, just outdated stuff. And so by spending a couple dollars to quickly rehab that house, and I'm not talking like a full gut or a flip or anything like that. I'm just talking about the basic things that people want in a house, right? People buy houses for the kitchen and the master bedrooms, right? The suites and all that. And so if you can upgrade those 2 items, you bring massive value to that house. So we would spend typically anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 on a kitchen. We'd usually get them new appliances. We'd help them replace the countertops. We'd help them refinish the cabinet top, the cabinet fronts. Sometimes we put down new floors, change the lights. You can go a long way with $4,000 when you're upgrading a 20, 30, 40-year-old house. And then in the master bathroom, we'd usually resurface the tub, we'd replace the countertop, we'd replace all the fixtures, the sink faucets, things like that. We'd have most of the house painted if we could, because typically painting a house, that's 2,000 square feet would cost us $3,500 or so. That was a great improvement. We'd replace the carpet, which again is about a $3,000 investment. But just by doing those simple things, nothing to do with the roof, nothing to do with the windows, nothing structural, no concrete, anything like that. We're typically in and out of a house in about 2 weeks, and we'd spend, $5,000 to $10,000, but it brought in equity-wise anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. So these guys would spend $10,000 on a house, and we'd be able to sell that house for $70,000 more. And this is obviously a $600,000 or $700,000 house, so you got to work with numbers in your area. But what it did is it separated us as agents, helping them bring so much value to the client that they would sell that house for more money. They'd be able to, net more money and be able to move on with great things. So that was big. Staging was another one. Staging obviously helps the client understand what they can do with that house, right? People come into a house and they see how people are living. People have a hard time seeing past their stuff. You have vacant houses, you have occupied houses. There's a big difference there. If you walk into an empty house, nobody knows where to put the couch. Nobody knows where to put the bed. Nobody knows where to put the dining table unless it's underneath the chandelier. So helping them understand these things can be huge. We had a great stager that we worked with for a while, and we would do videos on staging occupied homes and staging unoccupied homes. I'm trying to think of both of those words. And it just helped people, again, see the value of that. Typically staging a house, out in California, it can cost $2,000 to maybe $4,000 or $5,000 depending on the size of the house and where you are. When we were in Utah, we'd typically stage a house for about $700. So you just got to make the numbers work for you. But again, you've got these interior designers who are a wealth of knowledge. Even just moving around the people's furniture that live in that house can be huge. Some of the stagers that we would work with would be willing to take out some of the owner's furniture for a period of time and store it and then bring it, to their next house after they bought a new place. It just helps declutter the place, make it a little bit easier. So if you can show the value of staging, that's obviously a cost that your client should probably shelf unless you're willing to cover that cost for them. But being able to sell them staging services can help you sell that property a lot easier and make your job so much easier. So let's see if there's any other sub videos here. A big video too, I think I kind of talked about that, but is really understanding what you should fix before you list the house, right? Nobody wants leaky pipes. Nobody wants a leaky water heater. If your furnace is having issues, have it tuned up. A big one that I realized is roofs, right? Roofs can be really expensive. It's a big cost. It's kind of an unknown. Getting a roof cert, they call it, or a certification can be big. A lot of roofers will give a warranty on a roof saying it'll last for 5 or 10 years. That can be big for FHA loans. So if you have these things available and teach your clients about this before they list the house, like don't do it when the house is listed, do it before. And that way you can say, look, we have a 10-year roof, we have a new water heater, we have a new furnace or whatever that you're fixing up. There's nothing wrong with this house. You're going to love it. Another big one that I suggest doing is doing a home inspection on the property before you list it. Because again, that home inspector is going to go through that house with the fine-tooth comb and find everything wrong with it. And if you lay that inspection binder out on the countertop as it's available for sale and people come through and you're like, look, we fixed everything on this list. The house is perfect. There's nothing to negotiate with, right? You're going to have much better offers. So if you can, again, teach your clients how to do that, that can be very helpful in your selling. Okay, so we talked about that. Yeah, I think that covers staging and repairs. Let's go to number 8, open houses and showings. So now this has changed a lot, right? We were talking to Tori before about California versus Tennessee. Tori lives out in Tennessee, and just the difference of life during COVID here and the shutdowns. I've noticed during these last couple of weeks, the country's starting to change of what's open and what's not. But open houses are kind of a thing of the past, right? Everybody's moved to Matterport and virtual tours and really just trusting what the photos look like. And so everything out there right now is telling you take more pictures, take more video, show your clients what they're going to get. Because of course they're going to want to see what's behind the camera, right? If you only take a picture that way and they miss the other direction, they were going to want to see it. So helping your clients understand why you do as many pictures as you do, or why you need to come in and take professional videos, that can be huge. One of the things that we would do all the time when selling a house was Matterport. And a Matterport video back then was $200 or $300. It wasn't terrible. Right now, you can probably get about the same. I know some companies are offering some great deals, but Matterport can be huge because it shows the whole entire house, the closets, the bedrooms, everything, right? They can even go outside and show what the views look like. I've seen Matterport guys do videos out of that as well. So you can kind of have like a virtual tour walking through that house. So do a video with your Matterport guy showing how the Matterport process works. And, we're going to come in, you're going to see every crack of this house. So if you want to sell your house and you need it to look good, clean it up, right? Maybe we need to hire a maid to come over and clean the house and have it look really good for the Matterport video to come through. Okay. So, maybe your state is still allowing home showings. Maybe it's still allowing open houses, things like that. You got to work with what you got to work with. But why do you do the things that you do? Why do you decide to have open houses, and why do you not decide to have open houses, right? If you're going to have an open house, how do you handle all the traffic? How do you handle all the people that are going to come through there? I know with open houses in the past, safety's been a big concern. People are worried about theft, things like that. So if you're going to have an open house, how are you going to show your client that they can trust you with their house sitting there open for all these people to come through, right? Are you going to have multiple team members there hanging out, making sure that nothing's stolen? Are you going to keep track of everything that, people that come through? Are you going to have videos around the house? What are you going to do to basically invite that trust in your client? Okay, so that's open houses, talking about Matterport, virtual tours. Again, just discussing how you do things. Maybe you want to get your camera guy over there. A big thing that we would do too is to fly the drone over the house, right? And look at the views and all those kind of things. Go interview the drone guy and show him how he's flying his cool helicopter around the house, right? And why he does what he does. So again, just being ultra transparent in all these videos is going to help you so much. A big thing that I realized over these last 10 years is that people like to see behind the scenes. They like to see what most people don't show them. They want to know what's going on behind the camera. They want to know, what's life like as a real estate agent. I mean, that gets into a whole nother topic of you and your life and why you do what you do and what drives you. But if you can help your clients understand all the work that goes into selling a house, all the work that goes into helping somebody buy a house, they're going to trust you and appreciate you so much more. Okay. So let's get into number 9 here. Multiple offers. This may be the case or may not in your area. Right now, I feel like we're seeing a lot of multiple offers on houses just because there's such little inventory. You're getting a lot of competition. People are getting outbid all the time. And so by default, they're just writing offers, right? And so the big video to make is how to handle multiple offers. Not that you're going to guarantee them, because you have to be clear about that. I'm not going to guarantee you a multiple offer situation, But what happens when we have, offers below market value? What happens when we get offers over? What happens if we have contingent offers? How do you handle those, right? Maybe you go through a couple different offers that you're dealing with current clients, and obviously be discreet for that client, but show how you handle those situations. How do you get that client the best amount of money when you're selling that house? And obviously we've transitioned from buying a house to selling a house, but even on the other side, if you're working with clients who are buying houses and you're in a multiple offer situation, how do you have your best leg forward, right? How do you have a contingent offer and still come out ahead and being the best person for that house to buy it? It doesn't always mean that you're going to offer the most amount of money. There's different strategies there. So talk about how you're going to negotiate, how you're going to come in with your best leg forward, what you can do to really win those offers. And then again, on the selling side, how you're going to make sure that you've chosen the best offer for that seller so that they get the most amount of money, or that they are able to sell homes on their terms, right? Maybe talk about rent back situations. We've had clients in the past who wanted to rent back the house for 2 to 6 months, and it gets kind of weird because like, you want to sell the house, but you want to stay. How does that work? And so how do rent back situations work? How do you write the contract? Maybe, if you want to interview an attorney for that, making sure that everything's clear, that can be a big one. Let's see here, talk about that. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, multiple offers, rent backs, I think those are the big ones there. Again, some of this stuff is going to be evergreen where it's not going to change that much, but some of the content might be depending on, kind of what's going on in that area at that time, right? If you're on a big upswing and you're seeing 10% increases year over year, that's going to change how you negotiate versus we're on a downward market. When I started getting into investing in real estate, we would buy a house and within a month it was worth less than we paid for it. So I had to assume that like my price was dropping and I had to prepare for that. So, depending on where the market is and what's going on, you kind of have to be adapt to those things and really understand what's going on. Okay. So that gets into our last topic of investors. And this is just a huge, huge topic, but we're only going to talk about the one video here. And it's really working with repeat buyers, right? So this could be second time buyers. It could be 50th buyers, right? Maybe they're buying their second house as a vacation home. Maybe they're buying their second house as their first rental property, right? Maybe they're buying their second house to move into and renting out their current existing property as a rental. So you've got that to deal with. You got the emotion that comes in with real estate, right? If people have bought and owned a home before, they know the emotion behind it. They're attached, they have memories. There's a lot going on in people's lives when they think about buying and selling houses. When you deal with investing, you have to cut all the emotion out of it and look at the numbers, right? You have to think about it from a renter standpoint of, do I want to rent from this person in this neighborhood? Do I want to rent this property? Do I, feel safe here? Those kind of things. We had a client talk to us yesterday about dealing with twin homes, right? And twin homes are weird because they're together, but you only own half the house. So what happens if your neighbor wants to paint their house pink and roof it with some weird roofing material, right? Now your house looks weird and maybe your renters don't want to move into it anymore. So you got to deal with that. There's 1031 exchanges that you can talk about. There's financing options, right? All the way back to lending, right? How are you going to finance this investment property? Are you going to have to put down 25% down? Are you going to be able to negotiate a seller finance transaction? Are you going to be able to pay cash, right? There's different terms of the lending. Talk about your ROI, right? That could be huge. I mean, there's so much at stake with people's investments. They're coming from the stock market right now because they're not sure where the stock market's going and how that's going to work. Real estate's always going to be going up. You're always going to be getting cash flow. So people are becoming more and more comfortable with investing in real estate. What types of ROIs can you expect, right? Maybe you have clients who are on the fence about investing in real estate, but you're convincing them of the safety of it and what's available with their money and how somebody else every single month is paying off your mortgage, right? What a great way to make a financial return. Talking about single homes versus multiple families, right? A single house rents completely different than a townhouse or an apartment complex or anything with multiple tenants, right? The amount of rent that you're going to get per house or per unit is going to be different. So helping them understand the value of that and how it increases, and dealing with an HOA as a renter, right? Maybe you're thinking about, again, that story, buying a house in an area where you thought you could rent it, but you can't. So understanding that. A term that one of my friends coined, which I love, is called when to roll up. And it basically says, if I buy a house, today, and let's just say I put down $100,000 on a $400,000 property, eventually my mortgage is going to get paid down so much I have all this equity, and equity is not feeding you at the end of the day, right? It's great to have it, but it's not helping you. And so when do you sell that property or refinance and split it and go buy 2 homes? Or when do you sell that single house and go buy a duplex or a fourplex? So there's lots of different things to consider with that. Again, there's dozens of people you could interview with these videos, different financial planners, different real estate investors, different, just lots of different things to consider. And so these are great pieces of video, especially if you're getting into the part where you're working with clients who buy multiple homes. I think as a real estate investor, that's your biggest gold mine, of working with a client who buys multiple properties a year. We've had some clients who will buy a duplex every single year, and it's awesome because it constantly feeds you a business, right? And they're referring their business to their friends and other family too, who get to know you and trust you too. So find a couple investors who you want to work with that can constantly bring you deal after deal. Those are the big ones. The last one I had on here, just to cover real quick, is Airbnb restrictions. In Carlsbad, where I live right now, there is something like 6,500 hotel rooms for rent over, like, night by night, right? And Carlsbad is huge into tourism because they want you to come, they want you to spend your money here. And so they are pro hotels and they are anti Airbnb. They don't want to rent to you. They don't want really any Airbnbs here. And so they're trying to shut those down. I've had a couple of friends here rent out like granny flats and things like that. And the city is not loving it. And so if you're trying to buy an Airbnb in a certain area, you got to be aware of the city restrictions, maybe the county or state restrictions as well. Talk about the benefits of what Airbnb can do for you as an investment property versus, year-to-year contracts. We had another client in another state who had a bunch of year-to-year contracts, and they were doing okay. They had a great ROI, but they switched to an Airbnb type of rental. So it was like every 2 or 3 nights they had turnover, and they increased their ROI a ton because they were able to get so much more money per month renting that property out. So again, if you can explain these things to your investing clients, it can, again, make you stand out and make you look like a great real estate agent that you are. Okay. So as we wind down here, we got about 15 minutes or so left of time. Those are my videos. Again, there's a lot to think about here. I didn't tell this story earlier, but we probably had people who are taking fervent notes here, and I'm happy to email any of you guys this list afterwards to make sure that you get all these down and can start making your 2021 content now. I think the last thing I would put on this is try to get these recorded as fast as possible and then drop one about once a month, right? So put one out in January, put one out in February, and just keep the videos coming, and then fill in the gaps with the little pieces of content, right? So if you're going to talk about real estate investing, drop one about 1031 exchanges, talk about the ROI, talk about multifamily, like in between. Definitely set up a newsletter this year and start communicating with your audience more and more and more. The more people you have on there, the more money you're going to earn. The more often you send out an email, the more people are going to be attracted to you and want to work with you, and you're going to sell more houses. So there you go. I've seen some questions pop up, Tori. Let's jump into those.
Yeah, I do just want to, I know you had mentioned the emailing, so I'll go ahead and make sure Eric gets a list of all the attendees and registrants, and Eric, you can go ahead and email that list over
Perfect.
to them. I also just wanted to give, I know you said this in the beginning too, the hardest thing is just being on video and being comfortable getting on video. And Eric, it's funny, the other day I actually told this story. I remember you telling me about one time when you were recording a video in Oceanside, and there were birds flying all over the place, and it actually got more views than anyone because it was relatable, right?
Yep.
So I actually told that story to someone the other day because she was asking me, how do you get comfortable with being on video? And it's one, being comfortable, but two, you're human, things happen. If you mess up, it's okay.
Yeah,
so
that was it. I mean, it was weird. Like one day I was listening to a podcast and the bug just sparked. I'm like, I need to do video. Like I need to start today or I'm never going to do it. And I always carry around a water bottle with me. And of course I was on my phone. So I set the two up like this on a table and I pointed at myself and I went live on Facebook, and it was so awkward. But I got through it. I don't think anybody could hear anything because the wind was wrestling and all that kind of stuff, but I got through it and it worked and I went on. So yeah.
Yeah, it happens. Mitch Lopez is asking about video branding. Mitch, I'm not exactly sure exactly what your question is, but Eric, do you have any insight on video branding when it comes to branding your videos?
A big one is just putting your logo down here, if you can see that in the corner, right? I mean, obviously YouTube, if you put it up on there, they're going to have their little logo of your channel. But having something, a watermark, something on there people can see, just so that, somebody else doesn't take your video and use it everywhere. I think, I always talk about branding as being a big thing. I'm not sure if you can see my slide here anymore that we have up, but I used to wear a bow tie every single day. When I first got started, my coach was like, you need a brand and you need an image that people are going to relate to and remember who you are. And so I wore a bow tie and I called myself the pro with the bow, and it became my brand for a while. And after a while, I'm like, man, I wish I would have picked something else because I hated wearing a bow tie every day. But that was my brand, right? And so every time I do a video or make something, I wore that bow tie so people would recognize me. And you've probably seen that amongst other people too. So any type of branding in your video can be huge because it's going to familiarize you with the audience.
There's a couple, he's asking like putting the logo on your video, and I know there's a couple different platforms that do that. I'm not sure if there's any free ones though. I know a lot of those, if you want your logo in there, it's a paid platform. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and it depends what you have. If you have a Mac, you can use iMovie and you can add a logo in real easy. If you have, I haven't used the Windows in like 10 years, but I think it's called the Windows Video Maker or Windows Movie Maker.
Movie Maker.
Movie Maker, yeah. You can add basically a PNG. So write that down, PNG, I don't know what it stands for, but it's a clear image overlay, and then you can add something to it. So basically you can put your logo down here in the corner and everything else will be clear. So whenever it's down there in the corner, it'll always show up. So if you need to go onto like Fiverr or something like that and have someone design your logo with a PNG, just have it like tucked down in the corner. So when you put it over your whole video, it'll always show up.
Perfect. And then another question is there a template for the videos? And then he had also mentioned BombBomb through KV Core. If you guys do use KV Core, which all of our, if you're an Allison James agent, you do have access to KV Core. They do have a core video, and it is powered through BombBomb. Eric, do you have any other insight on BombBomb?
I love BombBomb. I signed up when it was like $3,500 a year. It was crazy, and they didn't have a monthly option. And I was like, I'm going all in. But yeah, if you're not familiar with BombBomb, it's one of those things where when you send out the email, the video shows up in the email and it's got like a quick GIF to it so you can kind of see you moving. And it was one of those, like, you'd hold up a sign and be like, hey, Tori, open this email, right? And so like they'd get to see that. But what's cool is you get a lot of interaction from people. You get a huge open rate, and then you can see when people would open it. And if you had it synced to your phone, you're like, hey, I see Tori's opening my email right now and she watched my video. Now's a good time to call. So BombBomb's great for that. Quick plug. But yeah, on what was the first part of that question though? There's something else about, the template. That's right.
The template, yes, sorry.
The template. So the big thing I've learned with templates is start with the problem. You got to bring up the problem, right? Like, we're going to talk about 10 pieces of content to make in real estate, and here's why you got to do it. And then jump into the 3 supporting facts. So 3 things that support the topic that you're going to talk about, whether it's the problem, whether it's the question, whether it's the solution, whatever it is. And then the 5th part is wrap it all up. So you got to remind people what you just taught them. So let's just say I'm going to talk about staging real quick. So here's my 30-second video, right? Staging's awesome. It's going to increase the value of how much you can sell your house for. Today, we're going to talk about 3 reasons why you should stage every house that you sell, right? Number 1, it helps people understand where they can put their furniture. Number 2, it's going to make it easier for people to see the finished product. And number 3, it's going to make your house look amazing, right? Or however you want to say it. So we talked today about staging, right? It's going to help people understand where they live, like you're going to recap. So that's how you want to do video templates. Just, again, tell them what you're going to teach them the 3 things, and then remind them what you taught them. Hopefully that helps.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a great insight. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. As I had mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, everyone who attended and even registered is going to get a copy of this video. So we'll go ahead and email that to you. Hopefully no later, we can get it to you before the weekend, but at the very latest, it would be Monday morning that you'll get this video. So look in your emails for that. You can go ahead and save this, rewatch it, and the other part of that is, Eric, I'm going to go ahead and send you the list so that way you can go ahead and distribute your list of 10 video content to create so that they have that on hand as well. Eric, do you have anything like last minute things you want to add before we end it?
I do. 2 things I want to cover. So everybody always asks, how do I learn more? How do I get better video? Like, how do I figure out what equipment to use? Like, everyone wants to know the camera, the mic, the light, all that kind of stuff. Like, number 1, don't get caught up in that. Like, you got one of these, pull it out and use it. It's good enough to get you started. And then worry about spending money later. Because if you go out and spend like $4,000 on the camera, you're going to feel super obligated to create all this content. And then it's going to be a disaster. So just use what you got. Just make sure that you can hear people. That's the big one, right? When you got seagulls in the background crowing and the wind blowing, it gets a little rough. So if you got to use your little, mic set or whatever, figure that out. Second part of this is we do a ton of free content. I realize that, I don't want to make you guys pay to play. I want to just give you guys as much free stuff as I can. We do have a lot of paid content, which is unbelievable in my mind. But go check out our website. There's lots of free stuff. We do boot camps, we do courses, we do all sorts of cool stuff. There's Facebook groups you can join. The website is TOS, like the orange stack, TOS University, like the school, university.com. Okay, so TOSuniversity.com. You can sign up to, thanks, Tori, you got it, perfect. You can sign up to talk to me one-on-one for 30 minutes if you want to ask a million questions. You can go check out our free courses. You can sign up for the next boot camp. You can do anything on there. It's kind of the hub of our world. So I hope for you guys to check me out, and I'll send out this email tomorrow to you guys so you have a PDF of all these videos. And most of all, Tori, thanks so much for having me. It's always fun to come and do these awesome webinars with you guys.
Yeah, it's always great to have you. And I did put the tosuniversity.com. I went ahead and put that in the chat, so you guys can all copy and paste that into your browser right now and go check it out as we're ending this. So thanks, Eric, so much. It's always a pleasure having you. It's always great. There's always so much content and insight that you give us for being virtual and just continuing to learn and being in front of people through video. So I do appreciate it. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you guys are all staying safe and you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We will be back next month. We're going to be talking about Instagram next month. So that is blanking on the date, but it's the third Thursday. You will get emails about it. Don't you worry. We'll go ahead and start promoting that here soon, all about Instagram. So don't miss that. Keep an eye on your emails. And like I said, I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. Thanks to Eric again. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I will see you all next month. Have a great one. Bye.